Hi you guys, it's Lisa. Thanks for stopping at my channel. Today I got a real treat for you. We're gonna make a wedding album, and this is a album that I got from Michael's, and I'm just going to take some of the pages out by removing this ribbon here. Very careful, and I'm taking note on how I took it out because I'm going to replace it near the end of the video. So just going to take out some of these papers because there is a lot of papers in this book. So I'm going to remove every other paper from this tablet, but first we're going to set it aside, and I'm going to show you the items that we're going to use in the project. This is a paper pack by Fern. That's the name of the company, and it's called Jane's Memoirs, and these are some chipboard pieces that were given to me by Franki from Let's Create, and I thought I may use them, but in the end I ended up not using them. Don't worry, I will put them in my stash and they'll come in handy in another project, I am sure. Also, she gave me this pack of ephemera, and I'll go through that too. But look at these beautiful pages. This is something I'm going to cut out, and I'm going to cut this whole pattern paper pack apart and create a beautiful wedding photo album of such, wedding album. And what great elements are in this pack. I'll link it below if you need anything, and feel free to email me if you have any questions if I forgot to mention anything. But I had a great time doing this album, and boy, it took me a long time. I want to say between 12 and 15 hours to make this album. So it's no quick and easy task, that is for sure. I stop and start on this video quite a bit, and I'm doing that just because I don't want you to get bored. So here's the ephemera pack that Franki also brought me with the paper pack and the chipboard, and I'm just gonna set these things out here so you can take a look. Now I did cut the white borders off of these items in the ephemera pack, and I did go around the edges with my archival ink in potting soil. So yep, that took me a little bit of time too, but I love fussy cutting, so it wasn't a real big chore for me. But yep, it's by Fern Studios. Lots of great stuff in there, and this is some of the items that I used. Now back to this little tablet notebook that I got. I'm cutting off this frame that's holding this wedding picture because I want to cover the front of this book, obviously, and I wanted this to be smooth. So I'm using my palette knife and just scraping off that extra cardboard bits that are on the front there. And we're going to figure out what we're going to do with the cover. I think most of the planning is what took so long. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I've never done a project like this before, and of course I've learned a lot of things along the way. Stay tuned to the end and I'll tell you the tips that I would change if I did it again. Alright, so I figured out what paper I wanted to use for the front and the back. And then I went through the paper elements and cut this bottom edge off where it has the advertisement. And you can see on the other side of the advertisement is beautiful paper that you can use for edges. So that's going to go in my stash. Here's the extras that you want to definitely keep from when you cut your papers. The paper sizes I have 10.5 by 8.5 is where I cut for the cover, and then I'm showing you the scraps. Now save those because there's great pieces on there that we'll cut apart and use in our book. So here I'm showing you the beautiful pieces that I'm going to go ahead and cut apart. This is the trimmer that I use, and it's Bitonic, and it has a removable um, handle there so that you can make it bigger. I like this trimmer, and I will link it below if you have any questions on where to get that. Okay, so here's the paper that I came up with that I thought would be perfect for the front. So I cut it by 10.5 by 8.5, and then I used my little score buddy, and we're folding it at 1 3/4 in from the edge using my score buddy, and then also another 1/2 inch from the edge, and these are going to be our fold lines. And again, if you have questions, don't be afraid to text me. So I made a front and back cover, and then I'm going to cut the circles so that I can put that ribbon through the front and back cover, of course, and adhere the book together. So I thought I would be able to use a pen or a marker and go ahead and mark the insides of those pattern paper and easily cut these holes. Well, not so easy, because they're so far in on the paper you can't reach them. So I thought of a few things I could try, and we'll see how that works. So I marked them, I measured them, and I thought that I would use this small circular punch. It's too far in, and my paper punch is too far in. So those didn't work, but keep them because we'll use them in the future here. So I thought, well, I'll use this tiny circle die and cut it out that way. Well, that's not going to work either, because it won't fit through my Big Shot. The Big Shot is what I use to use with my dies. Well, you can see it's not going to fit. Oh, what am I going to do? I had to set it aside and think. I thought, well, maybe if I just used a cutting tool and just poked around the holes, I could get it to work that way. But boy, that was taking me forever. I didn't have time for this. So I had to think about it, and I'll show you in the near future on what I came up with. Because this is not going to work. Just one hole took me about 5 minutes. And I had 8 of them to do. So I had to put my thinking cap on, and I'll come back. Okay, so here I'm going to show you what I'm going to use for elements. I'm going to cut this piece of lace out on the left hand side, and all of these elements from the pattern paper pad, the beautiful elements that are on here, the flowers, the paper pieces. Oh, the flowers are just absolutely gorgeous. So I wanted to cut these out, all the elements, and then I'm going to go around them with my potting soil archival ink. Look at this great one. Oh, I love it. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it off camera. Took me quite a bit of time. So back to my paper here. Alright, I knew that I was not going to be able to cover 50 pages for this book. It would take me way too long. So I just pulled off the second sheet so that the whole book would not fall apart. And this is what I came up with. So I pulled out the second sheet, turned the page, pulled out the second sheet, and now I have 25 pages, which is a little more doable, but you'll see in the end, I do get rid of a few more because that is an awful lot to do. So I'm going to go off camera and cut out all of these elements. And like I said, use my archival ink and do the edges. Alright, back to the book. I'm still trying to figure out the papers. So the inside papers I came up with are absolutely gorgeous, and they're 8.5 wide by 8.25 tall. And I went through all of the papers that I hadn't cut up with the elements and go ahead and cut those so that they could be used for the inside covers of the book and also the inside pages of the book. Look at all these wonderful elements that I've cut out. How fun. What a great pattern paper pad. Now I dug out some more stuff from my stash, and here are some 3D butterflies that I had. I do not know the name brand. They've been in my stash for a long time. I thought I would use that gold embossing paste on some of it. Perhaps some fibers that I had in my stash. These beautiful paper flowers by Prima. And I thought those would really go cool. I was just digging out stuff from my cupboards and cabinets and going wild here. And that was a really fun part of doing the project. Using up things that I had in my stash. It makes it very rewarding that way. I dug out lace, I dug out cheesecloth, I even dug out some patterned tissue paper. And look at these paper dolls from Tim Holtz. I've got some Tim Holtz tissue paper here also. I'm not sure what we're going to use, but we have lots of options, don't we? Here's some cool brads that have letters on them. We've got some really cute dragonfly brads. We've got some really cute antique paper clips. Here's some wooden buttons. So the possibilities are endless. And here I had some pearl buttons that I thought would look really cool because these papers are very vintage. But you'll see how it turned out in the end. Lots of options. More than I needed, apparently. So let's get busy. There's the archival ink, and I'm going around the edges. Good thing to do when you're watching TV or watching some of the great videos that you'll find here on YouTube. So I'm going to work on that. I'm going to cut my papers to size, and we're going to come back. Alright, I'm back, and look it, I got my holes cut. This is a great product that I found, and I will link it below, and it's by We Are Memory Keepers, and it is a great punch that you can do the different depths for the holes. What a great invention. I love it, and I'm super excited to have it. So it'll be linked below in case you have the same problem I had and you just couldn't get to where those holes needed to be. So that was cool. So I punched the holes and I put the front and back cover on, and I used my matte medium to do so. And I just needed to trim off this back edge so everything lined up perfectly. Isn't it neat? I like it. I dug out some of this music sheet because I didn't have enough papers with my pattern paper to go through all of this book. So I needed to have some other things to fill in some of those pages. And I thought by doing the edges, it would give it a little bit of vintage feel. I went around all of the papers that I had, and I worked on that. It took me a little bit, like I said. And if you don't have the full piece of paper, don't worry, we'll add some of those elements to the edges. So this is what I had after I cut everything up. And they're 8.25 by 8.5. Now, I saw Sean Petit use this technique where she's going to put down some ink and smush some of the papers, and it turned out really cool. First I'll adhere the front and back cover, and I'm going to use my matte medium and set that aside so it can dry. Isn't this going to be just beautiful? Don't worry about those edges, like I said, because when you have an element that you cut out, it will cover up the side and no one will even know. Pretty neat, huh? So I'm gonna get started, and remember to do all your edges. So here's what happened. When I was putting down my elements, I thought the paper was too white. So I spent about an hour and a half going through the whole 25 pieces of that paper and darkening the edges around everything. It took me a long time. And that's how the papers are going to fit in. So look how neat that is. They're gonna be gorgeous. And now when I was looking at this, I'm like, oh dear, that some of that paper looked way too bright. So I was gonna try and add some color to some of those music sheets and make them look a little more vintage. And here's how I went around the edges using my archival ink. And that took quite a while. Okay, so here's my papers that I want to make a little bit vintage looking. And this technique I saw on Sean Poteet's channel, and she did a great job by adding some color to these papers. And of course, there's going to be some time that you're going to need to let those dry, but the result in the end is definitely worth it. I even had to pull out a few pages from different pattern paper packs so that I had enough to complete the whole entire book. The paint that I'm using here and putting down are Liquitex liquid professional ink, and I'm using a lot of water, and I'm just putting the colors down and smushing the papers through so that I can add some of those different colors to the paper and make them come out a little bit vintage. Some of the colors that I had, of course, were burnt sienna. I used burnt umber. I used some raw sienna also, and these are wonderful, wonderful inks by Liquitex, and I'll link those below too for you, don't worry. So I had a great time just making all of these papers and smushing them through the ink, adding water back and forth. Wonderful, wonderful. Now look at here. I spilt my raw umber ink, and I was more sad about losing the ink than I was about creating the mess. So you'll see in a few frames here that I saved the ink in that towel, and when I needed to add some more to my craft mat there, I just squeezed the towel and got the rest of the ink out of there so that I didn't waste it. Right there I'm showing you. I was not wanting to waste that whole bunch of ink that I spilled. And then I put down a little bit of this. It is, let's see, where's the color? It's golden fluid, and it's quinacridone magenta, and that was just an aha moment. Look at these wonderful papers. I even grabbed some full sheets of paper out that I'm going to use in a art journal project. So yeah, I could not stop once I started with this technique. I just kept going and going and going. I had papers all over my craft room floor, on every counter, They were everywhere. But I had a lot of fun doing it, and I have a lot of great products that, or papers that I'll be using in future projects. So I will try and link the video for Sean when she's doing her project with this technique also. And let me tell you, it was fun and it was addictive. And I'll definitely be using that again in the future. Sorry, I'm dropping a few things on the floor here. I apologize. So yep, use lots of water and lots of paint and go to town and make some of those great background sheets. Look at how beautiful. I just couldn't stop, like I said. Oh, love it. So I'm going to clean up this mess and I'll be back. Okay, so I put that piece of lace on the front. I adhered the inside and I absolutely love it. Now I did use this circle punch to punch out the little circles that would go over the holes that I cut in the front, and I adhered them down also with my matte medium. Here I'm working on that little frame for the front cover, and I'm using a piece of the pattern paper pack, and I'm just going to go ahead and draw the image with a pencil and go ahead and cut that out so I can adhere it to that piece of cardboard that I took off the front in the beginning. I'm going to cut that out with my scissors and adhere that onto the piece of cardboard. Matte medium again. Now look at this. I got my fingers all covered with these rubber finger cuts, and they're super nice because I'm going to use my hot glue gun and adhere a bunch of these paper flowers. They are absolutely gorgeous, and I always seem to burn my fingers when I use my hot glue gun. Now I'm being sure that I'm leaving the top portion of this frame open so that the recipient of this photo album can put their picture in it. They don't want a picture of whomever this is in the frame now, obviously. And then I go ahead and I adhere the first I have to cut the picture down a little bit to make it fit, but no worries, we got it to work in the end. Yeah, if you have a hard time with hot glue like I do, these rubber silicone finger covers are real nice for hot glue projects. And I'm just going ahead and adhering those flowers, and as I was doing so I thought they needed a little bit of that potting soil archival ink around the edges to give them a little bit more dimension. Now is when I'm starting to have a bit of fun. The whole task of this book took a long time, like I said, but it's definitely worth it in the end, and I had a good time taking it up to Let's Create in Wisconsin Rapids and showing the girls the end result of the product that they brought me. It was very nice of them to bring me the papers, and I wanted to show them that I actually appreciated it, and I used it and went ahead and created something. And I wanted to show you guys too that, it is a project. It does take a long time, but super cool in the end. So I'm just arranging those flowers there to the left. And they had some leaves in this flower pack also. And I did use a little bit of a green spray to go ahead and put some green shimmery spray color to the leaves. And that really gave the front element a really nice touch also, I thought. So I'm thinking that this looks really good. What do you think? I like it. And we gotta set that aside, of course, to dry. And here's my papers. I'm working on that. And here's how they turned out. And I've got a lot more to go, as you can see. I put that ribbon back through the front cover, and I've got my papers in there. And I used this plastic little needle to thread that ribbon through the front. Now I'm going to work on the inside of the book, and this is the fun part for me. I really thought I'm using this double-sided adhesive tape, and I'm creating all kinds of little pockets and little stash areas for the book, so they can put different things in there. Like you could put maybe a wedding napkin. You could put some different notes to yourself so you don't forget all the fun things that happened that day, and it just all kinds of fun little things. So I'm going through my scraps and I'm seeing what I can make work. And on the other side, here I'm going to, here I put some adhesive foam squares just to make part of that stand up. And then that's a great little pocket. So we're using that ephemera pad, like I said, and I cut around the white edges off, and I used the brown and edged everything. Another project for when you're watching TV. It takes a bit, but it's worth it in the end. And then you can put all of those different pieces. Here I made some frames out of the ephemera. I cut the inside and the outside out, and I'm going to adhere that with my double-sided tape, leaving the top portion open, and they could slide a picture through there. What a great idea, huh? Turned out cute. So I just wrote on there, place picture here or something, picture here, just so I could slide that piece in there so people would understand what was going on with this little frame down in the corner there. I wanted it to be so someone would know what to do with that, and then you could slide that little piece of paper in there, and they would know that that's for a picture. Cute, huh? Yeah, I like it. So I went through the entire book and I put down all of the elements, and I had some great fun. Now I'll show you how it ended up in the end. Here's the book, and it is looking wonderful. Those flowers turned out really good. So we put some pictures there. We put down some lace from the book. I created some little paper clips with those circles. There's some of those dimensional butterflies. I've got little tags that are in there so they can write on them. I used some stickers that I had in my stash. Another one of those paper clips. There are some of the Tim Holtz paper dolls. And just little tuck spots and everything. There's some lace on that one. These little things. I used a lot of dimensionals. And I think it turned out great. I'd love to hear your comments in the comments below. And I was going to take off this sticker because it wasn't showing up really great. It says Mr. and Mrs., but I was ripping the paper. There's another piece of lace, another little tag. Those are some rub-ons, lace rub-ons I had in my stash. 2 more frames that I created there. And I thought this page maybe needed a few more of those dimensional butterflies. I'll try and find some and link them below for you. But just look through your stash and find some great items. It's so rewarding to use up what you have. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll show you some pictures towards the end. And then one thing I wanted to give you a tip is that when I went around the edges of the white papers, that took me a long time. So I would suggest taking those papers out and creating your own papers with maybe some cream or manila to avoid that whole process there. Here I'm using that gold embossing paste, and I'm using it with a stencil, and I put it on all the pages to create a little bit of complacency through the whole book, so everything seemed to fit together. I hope you like it. Lots of pictures at the end. Have a great week, and we'll see you again soon.